Hey, how's it going out there, folks? Welcome back here to a Wednesday night, 9:45 p.m. here, California time, December 18th, 2024 is the date. Latest activity here on the earthquake 3D globe shows a 2.1 earthquake up around the Alaska area. Before we get to earthquake activity, I want to show you guys a little article here published by the USGS in regards to the Newberry Volcano up in Oregon. Beautiful area just outside of Bend to the southeast area. Now, the Newberry Volcano last erupted, it looks like about 1,300 years ago. Looks like it had a, it's called a big obsidian flow. Present day hot springs, background levels of seismicity, and geologically young lava flows indicate that it is still an active volcano. So they put out a public information statement here that beginning on December 22nd, 2024, and continuing off and on for several weeks to months, a private exploration company called Mazama Energy will conduct geothermal exploration work near the Newberry Volcano in Oregon. As their geothermal work proceeds, many small magnitude non-volcanic earthquakes will occur, which will be detected by the Newberry Seismic Network. That will be interesting to watch here during the geothermal exploration activities. I guess they had some back in 2012, 2014. For example, they had hundreds of small earthquakes of magnitude 2.5 or less, which occurred while a company conducted its work. So, it looks like it's been a little while, over 10 years since I've done anything geothermal-wise out here. This will be interesting to watch. Humans poking around a volcano. A lot of people claim that this is nothing to worry about. This is just very typical. And we do see this a lot in terms of the geothermal activity in the Clear Lake volcanic field, for example. But look at this map here, the geothermal activity back in 2012, 2014. So we've seen where they were working outside the caldera area there to the west. Now, what their whole process is involved, we'll have to investigate a little bit more. But I'm pretty certain it's going to be similar to the activity that takes place up here around the Clear Lake volcanic field. These are induced earthquakes with the geothermal processes involved here across this area of California. So one would think, looking at this map, we got a volcano about ready to blow here outside of Clear Lake, California. But that's not the case. This is geothermal activity. There's a whole process involved inducing earthquakes across this area. Over 1,000 earthquakes. Sometimes in recent past here, I've seen that number triple up into 3,000 and 4,000 earthquakes a month there across the Clear Lake volcanic field. So it'd be interesting to watch and see what they come up with. But the activity specifically there across the Clear Lake volcanic field is related to these hydrothermal plants out there, and there's a number of them, and they inject raw sewage into the heated area below to create some type of dry steam, which in turn powers the energy there, or powers homes across the Bay Area, by producing the energy. It's interesting nonetheless, but we'll definitely have to watch that up there at the Newberry Volcano. Again, beautiful area nonetheless, but speaking of that, let's go check that out real quick, see what we got there across the Newberry Volcano. I want to see specifically where are we at? What we have here in terms of, any elevated activity in terms of inflation out there at that volcano. So these are GPS stations positioned out there. Just want to take a look, see what we have for data. Not a whole lot of differential there on that station. And who knows where they're going to be working at. It could be around the northern edge, eastern, southern edge. Really nothing of any abnormal activity there across that volcano for now in terms of, specific volcanic activity. There's the little drop there. This is the vertical displacement. Pretty significant drop recently, but also an eastward movement here, which is a little odd on the GPS station this year. Not for sure why this area would be moving east, unless it's related to the general strain out here on the Cascadia. You never know. So we'll continue to watch that. Let's see what we got here for any seismograph stations, see if anything's kicking off right now. These are, let's see, that one does not appear to be working. Looks like it may be offline. Let's see if this seismograph it's working, but it's a little overblown there in terms of the amplitudes. I don't see any earthquake activity out there, but that's, it'd be interesting to watch here in 4 days. That's when they're going to start working out here in their geothermal explorations. I like that word, here in 4 days. So we'll check that out. But it's an interesting article, and it's well worth, definitely well worth a read. I'll provide the link here for you guys to check out in regards to this latest exploration here by humans. And yeah, look at that, geothermal exploration activities. All right, so nothing going on there for now. We'll check back here in a couple days, see what kind of activity stirs up out there. Area around Washington, Oregon, pretty quiet out there. Not a whole lot of seismic activity right now. Northern California, a handful of earthquakes, including a 3.7 earlier this morning, a 3.3 as well. And a number of 2s in that mix of earthquake activity there across the southern end of the Cascadia subduction zone. A couple spikes there on the Petrolia station, Northern California. That sits right about here. Those are very small microquakes, so not a whole lot coming into the seismograph stations for now. Let's check out the tremor map here while we're at it. 16 epicenters of tremor along the Cascadia, a little bit around the Vancouver Island ranges here, and also southern Oregon. So not a whole lot down in Northern California, but it'll be interesting to watch. We've had a lot of activity lately there across the Northern California area in terms of tremor underneath this region into the Cascadia subduction zone. We're talking about 3,438 epicenters of tremor. That's just in the last month alone. And of course, you've seen what's happened out here. Seen a 7-pointer and numerous other earthquakes out there across this region. For a total tally, and this is just according to the USGS, we could probably raise this number up another 100 or 2 in terms of the small microquake activity that has been left out of the mix of reporting out here. So 479 earthquakes around the region there. A couple earthquakes down into the deeper areas of the Cascadia subduction zone recently. A couple migrating up here around the Cascadia as well. So I don't think we're done yet. We're just looking at some pauses out here. It tends to take a little cycle in terms of energy pressure and transfer around the region. It's not always under the spotlight out here, right? It may come a time here like we're seeing right now, just a little stale activity, just some minor activity, and then other areas may see advancement while this area may wait a little bit to see a re-uptick in terms of earthquake activity. But today was pretty decent. I mean, I wouldn't say this is quiet activity. 11 earthquakes here, including a couple 3s earlier this morning. So things are not quite all that, they're just not quiet. Just kind of not all that interesting in terms of larger scale activity for now, though. There across the Nevada area, still seeing a swarm of activity and a little bit of migration here south of the region that we've seen that 5-pointer here hit recently. Looks like, what do we got? 150. So it's been over 7 days already. Gosh, I can't believe that. 437 earthquakes there from a 5.7 there struck over 7 days ago. Now, that may seem like a large number of earthquakes there following that 5-pointer in relation to the only, 400 and something here from a 7-pointer. And that goes to the fact that they have not reported all the earthquakes out here. And I've pointed this out in the last couple videos here. We've seen hundreds of readings here on the Petrolia station with no earthquake being reported out there across the area. And that's got to do with just the general preliminary reporting system that they have out here. You think they would report stuff under 2.0, but I think only 10% of the time they do that. So you could add a couple more hundred earthquakes onto that area of Northern California. This one's pretty accurate, though. They've done a good job of reporting all the ones and whatnot, all the smaller earthquakes that have taken place out here. What's the difference between the two? This is still the USGS, right? We're not in a different country. Different state, maybe. Maybe that has something to do with it. But all I know is Northern California should be well above the number of earthquakes that Nevada has seen. So there's a couple ones, including a 2.9 out there in the last hour or so. We'll continue to keep an eye on that. The rest of Northern California out here, very quiet out here across the Bay Area. That's a little strange. If you look at the last 7 days of earthquake activity, man, pretty much like a ghost town out here across the Bay Area. It's a little odd. I mean, eventually that's going to have to move. Many fault systems here across the East Bay have a super high percentage here of seeing a large earthquake within the next, it could be soon. I mean, this was 10, 15 years ago when I was looking at the percentages, and this area is well overdue as well. Things are pretty quiet in the Bay region. Southern California, pretty quiet. Look at that. Not a whole lot in terms of 2.5 and above. Generally small microquake activity out there today. Little trail of activity through Nevada, Utah, up into Montana. Nothing going on there across Yellowstone, but I do want to double check that. Make sure that things are not going crazy up there and we're just missing it. There's some wind events here from earlier. A lot of these seismograph stations here are exposed to the elements outside. So when the wind kicks up and the snow falls and starts blowing around, it makes a little noise out there on the seismograph stations. A little bit of earthquake activity here across this seismograph station there is noted. In those very small spikes, but those are probably under a 1 or so in terms of the magnitude level. So not a whole lot going on there through Yellowstone for now. Texas area, Oklahoma, oil fields out there fairly quiet aside from a couple earthquakes. The rest of the country pretty quiet. Way up north into the Yukon area of Canada, 4.2 early this morning. Alaska region here getting pretty active out there across Denali southward, but you bring that down to the 2.5 and above model, only a handful of them. So really not a whole lot of larger activity, just a whole bunch of microquake movement for now. They're across the Big Island of Hawaii, still watching this. Things are starting to get more broad scale activity out here across the Big Island. So we'll go check that out, see what's going on there real quick. The USGS HVO folks there are reporting the updated status every day now in regards to the Kilauea volcano because of the elevated seismic activity out here recently. And most of it has been underneath the summit area. So I feel that the energy there, the magma storage is starting to accumulate underneath this region of the Kilauea volcano. Going to have to watch that pretty closely. Our last eruption was back there across the Middle East Rift Zone. Far as inflation, notice that downward trend here, but that could be, in terms of magma movement, that could be moving off somewhere. More underneath the lava lake region, I think, which is right up here where all the earthquake activity is occurring. So we'll continue to watch that. As far as earthquake activity, we've seen it on the map. Most of the movement there in the last 12 hours was earlier. So not a whole lot taking place right now, but it's Definitely getting some interesting activity out there. We'll continue to keep an eye on it. The rest of the globe out here, the model. See what we got for newer activity here in the white rings. Bunch of movement down here outside of the Macquarie Island region, 5.7 and a 4.6. Still waiting on some larger adjustment here across the New Zealand region. That's been pretty active here recently with a couple interesting earthquakes there around the Hikurangi subduction zone. This earthquake for one right at the surface level, 5.2. A couple deep earthquakes here into that subduction zone. We got to watch it, right? It can move. It can produce some big earthquakes out there, and there's a reason why those ridges are out there across that area of New Zealand. It can produce some megaquakes. So eventually, that's coming there for the New Zealand area. Not a good thing, obviously. It's not something anyone would want. That's for sure. But living on this planet that's geologically active, that's just gonna come. It's gonna happen. All right, looking out and about here. South Sandwich Trench here pretty active this morning with a 5-pointer and a 4.7. Pretty shallow out there. It does move on occasion. It is a major subduction zone that last seen an 8-pointer back in 2021. Here's the last week of earthquake activity, some 5s and 4s out there. Japan, older movement out here across the Kuril-Kamchatka. Getting a pretty good swarm of activity out here around the Philippines. It looks like things may be starting to stir up out there. Just outside the Manila region. That's going to be right up here. Just to the north there of the Manila region. 5.1, 4.7, a couple other earthquakes out there. Kind of curious to see when our last big earthquake activity was in that region. Let's check out 6.0 and above. Go back here a little ways. We'll draw a little area here on the map. Just want to take a peek here, see what history tells us about that area. Excuse me, still got a little cough that comes and goes for some oddball reason. But it seems like a lot of people here have been sick recently. Let's see, make sure that's the right area. Yeah, I think we're good right there. So we'll pull this up and see what they have for the earthquake activity here since records have been kept. All right. Well, it looks like the last 6-pointer here in this area back in 2011. So a little bit of time has passed here where we're seeing that elevated activity right now. So 4.7, 5.1. Looks like things may be starting to get to move out there. Right? 2003, 2011. Here we are, years later, following that 6-pointer in 2011. So it looks like we're overdue here for some larger activity. Goodness. As far as larger movement goes in that area, well, they can get pretty large. 7.5 back in 1934. That's right around that region where we're seeing the activity right now. Largest magnitude. Let's take a look here. I guess it's going to be that 7.5, 1934. So hard to say if we're going to see anything of that magnitude, but it's definitely something to watch, right? A little swarm of activity there. And that's the only activity here in the last 30 days. It's just this. Well, it looks like we had a little one, 4.5, back in the 1st of December. But things are starting to get moving there. So we'll keep an eye on that. Could see some larger scale activity take place there soon around that region. Definitely a hot spot right now. And that's this is just what the USGS is showing. If you look on the EMSC model, there's a bunch of 3s in there as well. just a pancake of earthquakes happening within that region there on the Earthquake 3D globe. Let's see, what have we got there? 4.3 around the Himalayas. Outside of, well, Nepal area. Goodness, 4.2. Pretty shallow earthquake off the plate boundary. Aside from that, a couple earthquakes up there around Iceland. Things rocking and rolling up there around the rift boundaries. Super deep activity there into the Peruchili Trench. Look at this earthquake right here, just raised off the globe. Is it going to be this 4.5? It is. Earlier this afternoon, early evening, I should say, almost a 600-kilometer deep 4.5. That's crazy. Is a super deep earthquake there into the Peruchili Trench. USGS reporting that earthquake as well. So in miles, that's going to be 359 miles underneath Bolivia. So watch this region here around the Peruchili Trench. That's getting a lot of deeper movement out here recently, and these deeper quakes into that subduction zone can definitely trigger and strain this area. It's a major subduction zone region, folks, and of course, you know, the greatest earthquake ever recorded in human history, at least in our recent history here, back in 1960, south of the Santiago, Chile area, the Great Chilean Earthquake, 9.5. So, you know, this is it's anywhere along this subduction zone is super, super dangerous and can produce some big earthquakes. So, got to watch that when there's elevated activity. Let's see what else we got here, folks. I think that's about it. We'll check out space weather activity here real quick, see what we have going on the sun. Looks like a little bit of activity out there on the eastern limb there from a sunspot. Notice the bright feature there on the UV image of the sun. Currently flaring with some C-flare activity. We'll have to watch that sunspot. Looks like maybe sunspot... looks like it may be 3927 or maybe a newer sunspot out here. That's stirring things up. Overall threat, 99% chance there for C-flare. M-flare, 40. X-flare, around 5% chance. No major auroras in the forecast there, folks, for now. And looks like there was a little article here put out recently by Kevin at the solarham.com site. Mentioning this new area of development, 3927. We'll have to watch that for sure. There's that far side eruption there yesterday. Had that been Earth directed, obviously we'd be looking at some significant auroras here in the forecast, but that's just not going to happen until we get that Earth facing side eruption. All right, looking at the weather models out here, getting pretty excited. You know, aside from the Christmas time period there, I love seeing the kids happy, opening presents and whatnot. We got some wet weather out here. I really couldn't ask for more. If you want to give me a Christmas present, bring me some rainfall and some wind, some low pressure systems out here. That makes me a very happy Earthmaster, that's for sure. So beginning, looks like this weekend here, we got some more rain coming up there for California, West Coast. Snow in the mountains there. Some more rain behind that, and it looks like for the, it looks like for Christmas Eve, it's going to be a wet one out here with some heavy precipitation and heavy snowfall there for the higher elevations there in California. I'm liking it. I'm loving it. I'm not liking it. I'm loving it. Absolutely. So it's going to be a very interesting Christmas Eve, and then another big system behind that. Slamming into the Pacific Northwest and Northern California. So we're going to be ending this year quite wet. And that is fine by me. Big old low pressure system there around early January. We'll have to keep an eye on that. They've been dealing with quite a bit of snow and colder temperatures. An overall look here at the total accumulated precipitation runs here. This is what the weather models are showing for the remainder of the year in terms of precipitation. Obviously, West Coast, California northward, getting in on some heavy duty precipitation. Minimal out here across the plains. Of course, around the eastern portion of the country, they got looks like a lot of precipitation accumulation as well. As far as any snowfall, well, let's see what we got. I mean, this is a GFS model. This could be wrong, and a lot of times it's right though. Most of the precipitation, heavy snowfall, going to be up around the Great Lakes states and the Canada, maybe Ohio, eastern Ohio, and a little bit out here through the mountains. Of course, California is getting in on quite a bit as well. Some of those higher elevations, we're talking about way above 48 inches. I've seen a snowstorm out here dump like 8 feet of snow out here from one system. So it can, you can get buried out here in Northern California up in the higher Sierra Nevada mountains when it comes to big time snowfall. All right, let's see what else we got. Another earthquake there on the Petrolia station. Another small microquake, and I wish I could have kept track of all these. And another earthquake not being reported. It's just, that's why I say there's probably a couple hundred, maybe it may even be 300 or 400 more earthquakes that need to be added here to the total tally, since they're not reporting all the smaller ones. So, and it is what it is, why there's a difference. Maybe because it's offshore. Maybe it has something to do with being around a populated area that they only report some of the microquakes. But it's definitely odd. But that's the importance of running a live seismograph station here, so we can see when earthquakes come into the area. And that's not a big one. That's probably it didn't even show up on the Dinsmore station here, so that's probably a 0.9, maybe a 1-pointer, 1.1. But anything 2 and above will normally show up on this nearby Dinsmore station. Petrolia sits right here in this area, south of Eureka, closer to the activity. Dinsmore sits further back away from this area, so that's why we don't see a lot of the small microquake activity stir up on the Dinsmore station, unless it's above like a 2.0 and above. Then we start to see the signature there from that quake. All right, folks, I'm out of here. Have yourself a good night. We'll catch you guys back out here in the morning sometime. I know a lot of folks mentioned that they did not get a notification on the update video this morning, and more than likely that was due to a number of factors there. YouTube only allows 3 videos to be put out in notifications in a 24-hour period. Yesterday I had a number of videos put out, including the member drawing. So that's probably why, most people didn't get that notification earlier this morning, just because I had put out so many video notifications yesterday. But I'm sure you guys will get this one. Let me know if you do. Just kind of keeping tabs on it and whatnot. So have a good night, folks, and we'll see you guys back out here sometime in the morning. Stay safe.